What's going down, everybody? Welcome back to another Commander ad Populum. Commander for the people, by the people, for the people. This is episode 11, and I have got some community topics to talk about today. But before I do, big shout out and thank you to the official sponsors of Commander ad Populum, Fusion Gaming. They are out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. You can find them online at fusiongamingonline.com. They are there for you and all of your Magic needs. You can head to themanabase.com to find Commander ad Populum there, along with all of Fusion Gaming Online's sponsored content. Articles, podcasts, YouTube, a variety of formats. They've got it all. Moving on, big shout out and thank you to all of the patrons of Commander ad Populum. It's not possible without you. I very much appreciate all the support and all of the Twitter followers. I posted a few altered cards for sale this week, and they've gotten shared and retweeted and bought up, and I appreciate that very much. That helps keep food on the table at my house. If you'd like to become a patron, you can do so at patreon.com/cadpopcast. You can unlock all kinds of benefits there for yourself, like altered art tutorial videos, discounts on altered art commissions if that's what you're into, a shout out on the show, and of course my unending gratitude, and that can be felt in our patron-only Discord as well. If you'd like to submit a community topic, you can do so by sending an email to cadpopcast@gmail.com, getting after me on Facebook, facebook.com/cadpopcast, or by shooting me a tweet at cadpopcast on Twitter. I'd very much like to hear from you, and that does keep my brain full of things to think about and prepare for all week in preparation for the show. Today, I actually have two community topics that I'd like to touch on, maybe shortened versions of both of them. Maybe we'll gloss over the technical section for this week, and then we'll get straight into the set retrospective, because I think I'm going to have a lot of cards and things to talk about, because today we're talking about alliances. I love that set. There was a whole bunch of good cards, great continuation of some of the mechanics in the Ice Age set, block, what have you. Alliances was a cool set. But first, the community section, and I've got I guess two topics that I'd like to talk about today. The first one, and it's just going to be quick because it's actually centered around MTG Arena, and I'm not an Arena player. I'm sure by now I'm the minority out there, but I'm not an Arena player. But I wanted to talk about real quick Arena's Mastery Pass, I don't know what to call it, program, feature. It was added to Arena with the Core Set 2020 update, and while I know that this is a successful way for online games to make money, I just want to, give all of the listeners just a precaution or a word of caution that this pass system, like others that it's modeled after, are very much a way to give you FOMO, or fear of missing out, as a means to get you to come back to the game or come back to the platform to engage with it again. And the hopes of this is that every time you engage with the platform, you're going to spend money on it. And if you got lots of money or you're comfortable with spending money or budgeting, that's fine, and I'm happy for you. But a lot of gamers, a lot of Magic players aren't very good with budgets, aren't very good with restraining themselves or refraining from spending money, especially when it is so easy. I assume in Arena, you've got a credit card or a debit card or a PayPal account linked to your account, and it's literally a couple clicks of a button and you've spent money. And I just want to caution everybody that it's really easy, and they make it that way on purpose. Amazon is the same way, right? Like, you could log on to Amazon and they just suggest something to you in your home screen when you open the app, and click, boom, you've bought it, and it arrives at your door in 2 days, right? So just be careful. The Mastery Pass system operates on experience points, and you unlock things at certain levels. So for every 1,000 experience points, you level up. And they cap it at 1,000 or however many points per day. They cap it, so you have to come back the next day to get that day's worth of experience. And of course, there's ways to gain experience faster by spending money or buying something so you can be the highest level, or so you can achieve the level that gives you the little pet cat that sits on your screen and plays a game with you. And they do that on purpose to, and I don't want to say target, because I don't think it's predatory per se, but they do sort of target people's gaming collector nature, where they want to come back and spend the money and engage with the platform to get the pet cat. Not only because that's what they want, but because it's a cat. It could be a good boy or a puppy or whatever. It could be whatever, but they want it. And it being a cat right now is just like, I don't know, cats are popular. They're meme culture thing. And I don't know, don't be tricked by it. Don't feel like you need to get it. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Maybe I don't have that mentality, but you know what? You know what it sounds like? And I've made the joke before, they don't call it cardboard crack for nothing, but playing Magic and holding cards and unlocking achievements or leveling up on Arena, whatever it is that's involved with you playing this game and collecting these things, real or digital, can be addicting. And you see people all the time, recovering addicts, that when they are sober, they do have issues with collecting or hoarding or impulsive disorders that fill whatever gap becoming sober off of your drug of choice has left in your life. This is a real thing. So I'm cautioning people, don't get caught up in the Arena pass system. You don't have to spend money on it. You're not going to miss out. Like if you miss a day of double experience points or unlimited experience points if you play all day, like if that's a promo they run, don't worry. You will get your experience points. Just go through the process of getting it. And that brings me to my next community topic. This is something that I was discussing with new listener of the show, new Twitter follower, Kevin. Kevin is a social worker. I don't know where he's from or what kind of work he does, but he's a social worker and a therapist, I think. From the little bit I've discussed with him on Twitter, I asked him, does Magic the Gathering ever find its way into your work? And he says, no, not per se, but he does take his work and apply philosophies from his work into Magic. And a thing that he talks to his patients or his clients, whatever kind of therapist he is, his patients or his clients, about is process-oriented thinking. Now, if you're a Magic podcaster through and through like I am, you've maybe heard of process-oriented thinking on the Limited Resources podcast, where they talk about making the highest probability play, where you analyze the board state of the situation or play to your outs, and if variance is such that you draw the card that you needed to win the game, then you've made a successful play. Or a better example might be always being conscious of tapping your mana in the most efficient way to keep colors open, to maybe bluff something that you have in your hand, right? Like you do what is the best play to give yourself the highest probability of success. Process-oriented thinking might also apply to developing a routine and learning the routine through and through, so it's like the back of your hand, and it's not always what's going to result in you winning the game, but if you're following a process that you know leads to success, over time you're going to start to see that success at a more frequent rate. So we discussed process thinking, and that made me think of back in the day when I was a high-level track and field coach, trusting the process and being positive. Two things. They relate to each other, and this is how I think of it. And I can apply this to games or Magic, and I can extract this from Magic the Gathering and apply it to my day-to-day life. Okay, so positive thinking. And I consider myself to be a fairly positive person. Here's the tweetable, the quotable, the whatever. I don't always need to be positive or happy or upbeat, but being positive means that even if I have a crappy day or if I'm in a crappy mood or have a crappy game of Magic, being positive means that I know in the future things will be better. Next game might be better. Next game I won't draw 18 land in a row. Next game I won't brick on the top deck I need to win the game. And I can think like this because I know that if I'm applying sound principles and following a good process, that the results will get better. I'd go back to when I was a coach. You've got an athlete or somebody that you're training and you make them do something that they don't want to do because it's physically hard or mentally taxing, right? You've got an athlete that is running in their first, what they consider to be a big time race. Maybe it's a provincial championship, or maybe it's, a qualifier for a national championship or a provincial team, right? And they're nervous or scared, what have you. That's part of the process of unlocking your eventual highest potential. You can't just, even as the coach, you look at all the seed times and you see which athletes are the fastest or the best ones, and you're confident that your athlete's going to win. They just have to show up and run down the track, right? But they're nervous. People are watching them. What if they trip? What if I'm slow? What if I didn't prepare enough? I don't feel good. Whatever it is. I tell them we've got a process. We've followed it. Competing at this provincial championship to qualify for nationals is part of the process. And if you just went to nationals because you're the fastest person in the province, well, you would actually do less good because you didn't follow the process. You had previous results that tell everybody around that you're the fastest athlete, but competing at provincials is part of what mentally prepares you to compete at the next level. And the same is true if you're trying to qualify for a Mythic Championship, Pro Tour, whatever. If you're trying to top 8 a local event or a Grand Prix, you got to go through the process. You got to decide on a deck. You've got to test with it. You've got to run through the tournament. You got a day 2, all of those things, right? Commander's the same way too. I didn't mean to use air quotes, a real Magic example, but Commander's the same way in that when you sit down, you go to F&M, you're playing with a group of friends, and you might get discouraged because you're playing in a pot of 4. I should have a 25% chance to win, but that's not always the case, right? And not always winning is the process. You have to learn how to win. It starts at deck construction, and it's about knowing what's prevalent in your meta and how to beat it or how to combat it, how to control it or how to race it, right? And how to play the game, posturing within game, politics, actual gameplay, right? Where we talk about, for the last couple weeks, casting spells and priority. When can I gain 1 card over the rest of the table? Or where can I save a couple mana? How can I tap my mana just a little bit more efficiently to more effectively bluff a counter spell or a removal spell, right? Those are the kinds of things that are very process driven. And if you can start to really pay attention to the little things like that, that's what's going to help elevate your game. Maybe this is kind of a little bit of a technical section, right? We're talking about elevating our game by tapping the right colored mana. Don't just willy-nilly, right? Like, I know what I do. I know that, let's say I'm playing a 3-color deck. I've got all my, let's say I'm playing black, blue, red deck. I've got all my blue mana here. I've got all my red mana next to it. I've got all my black mana next to it. Then anything that can produce 2 colors goes in its own pile, and anything that can produce 3 colors goes in its own pile. Anything that produces colorless goes in its own pile. So maybe I've got like 3 or 4 different 2 or 3 card piles of lands in front of me, right? 2 islands, 2 mountains, 2 swamps, maybe like a watery grave, and then a colorless land. And that way, when I look at a glance, I know, okay, I've got 2 of each of these, 1 of these, 1 of these. How do I make it so I leave as many colors open as possible? And just learning those little things, whether you're just starting out in Magic, whether you're new to Commander and leaving different kinds of mana open so you can posture a removal spell, is something you've never had to deal with before. Maybe if you're trying to elevate your game, maybe if you're even teaching somebody, this is the kind of thing that you can teach them to do. You build a deck for them, you know that you put counterspell in there, so when they tap out all their blues and they don't need to, you can say, hold on, untap your blues, leave those open in case you have anything. That teaches them, right? Maybe you're giving away a couple percentages off your win percentage, but I don't think that should matter when you're trying to teach. The point is, there is a process. We all have to go through it, whether it be with our jobs. You know, you sit, you look up on your phone at night before you go to bed. Interview skills, right? You wear a suit and you shake hands and you look people in the eye and you sit up straight, and you might not get the job, but the more you look somebody in the eye, the firmer your handshake is, the more confident you speak about yourself, your credentials, your abilities, the higher the probability is that you're going to get that job. The more times you do a job interview, the more likely you are that you get jobs. It's kind of funny, like nobody wants to get good at doing job interviews, right? That means you're not getting jobs or you're losing them. So maybe that's a bad example too, but you get the point, right? It's trusting the process or thinking about the process is relevant to your life, your gaming, teaching or learning, your physical activity if you're into playing football or track and field or whatever like I was. It's about the process. So if you have anything like that you'd like to talk about, let me know on Twitter at CADPopcast. I'd like to hear what your process is for Magic or otherwise. But right now, I want to move into our set retrospective. And today, like I said at the top of the show, we are talking about alliances, and I'm pumped. So Alliance came out June 10th, 1996. And get this, 8-month gap between our last set, Homelands, and Alliances. The longest gap between two expansions of all time. This is Wizards sitting back in their chairs like, oh, what have we done? Okay, how are we going to fix this one, guys? What are we going to do? And they came out with a product that I think was really good. Now, I mean, compared to today's sets and today's products and mechanics and card design and philosophies, okay, sure, it's not as good. But when we're looking at alliances, we've got some of the most prolific cards in cEDH. Like, what does that say? And I know this isn't a cEDH podcast. If you play cEDH, that's great. That's fine. Welcome. Alliances could be one of the best sets ever for your format. But before we get into a card-by-card discussion, I want to talk about the couple legends that were in the set, the legendary creatures. This is a weird set where you could get like uncommon 3 or uncommon 2 or whatever, like or rare. The uncommons had different rarities, right? Anyways, 12 card booster packs. And in each of those booster packs was a rare card, of course. 3 of those cards were legendary creatures. Only 3 legendary creatures in this set. And it's funny because there was a cycle of 3 color cards. 2 of them were legendary and 3 of them weren't. So I'll talk about the legendaries first. First one, we've got Kesa. That's it, just Kesa. So she's a 2/3 elf druid, I think. She's errated to elf druid for green 3. She says, green creatures you control get +1/+1. Full stop. So that's fine. She goes in probably elf decks, right? Or druid decks. Probably elf decks, though. Druid decks kind of only care about tapping for mana, where elf decks would maybe care about making tokens and attacking. So that's cool. The next one, Feldegriff. This is everybody's favorite group hug hippo. And interesting here, legendary creature Feldegriff. Not only his name, but also his creature type. There's a very small subsection of creatures that actually have the same creature type as their name. So he's a 4/4 for green, white, blue, 1. And he's got green, gains trample. Target opponent gets a 1/1 hippo token. White, gains flying. Target opponent gains 2 life. Or blue, return it to his hand. Target opponent may draw a card. So you activate an ability of Feldegriff to either save him by returning him to your hand and making an opponent draw a card, giving him flying, or giving him trample. So you're helping an opponent while you're beating down another opponent. So he's kind of a group hug, but you can use him to actually kill too. So cool card. I think he kind of got a pseudo reprint in Plane Shift with Questing Feldegriff. Same colors, it's a hippo, all that jazz. But let's get to the elephant in the room. My boy, Lord of Tressorhorn, originally printed in Alliances. So I've talked about this before, and I discussed the Lord of Tressorhorn deck on a recent episode of Commander's Brew, but check this out. Let's read them anyways, just because I want to. Red, black, blue, 1 for legendary zombie, 10/4 black to regenerate him. When Lord of Tressorhorn enters battlefield, you lose 2 life, you sack 2 creatures, and target opponent draws 2 cards. Oh, that, my friends, is a terrible and awesome. A terribly awesome Magic card. That is so exactly the kind of thing that I just love right there. He is a 10/4, so he's going to beat. He's automatic infect kill if you can get through when you give him infect. He regenerates, which is a totally fun ability. As Wizards doesn't like, their kill spells don't say can't be regenerated anymore. So if somebody casts something that just kills creatures, well, you just regenerate them. I find myself in-game finding ways all the time just to leave a black open just to blow people out. They think they got my guy. Nope, just regenerate, I'm sorry. And then his terrible ability where you lose 2 life, sack 2 creatures, and give an opponent 2 cards. You find ways to just make that good. All the creatures in the deck that I play have dies triggers, so when you sacrifice them, you get a benefit. Not only does that help you cast your Lord of Tressorhorn, but you also just block with them to either trade and get an upside or just to keep yourself alive longer so you can mass reanimate all of them. It's an awesome deck. I highly recommend you going to Commander's Brew, and it's like episode 199.2 or something. I was just before their 200th episode because Andy was away having a baby, so you can check me out there. I talk about the deck. It's great. I love it. It's one of my favorite decks. Anyways, getting back to some single card discussion on alliances, I want to highlight the other couple cards from that 3-color cycle. I want to talk about Misfortune. Get this. Okay, so it's Jund and 1 for a sorcery. Target opponent chooses 1. You put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, then gain 4 life, or they put a -1 on each creature they control and lose 4 life. That's a 4 mana pump your whole team or kill their whole team, and some incidental life gain or life loss. And the life loss, when they're at not very much, you just target the opponent at the lowest life, and they'll probably pump your whole team and you can hit somebody else. That's pretty cool. And the Naya one is an enchant world. Remember, the enchant worlds are a set of enchantments where there can only be 1 enchant world on the battlefield at a time. They're kind of like legendaries, but for everybody, and they're enchantments. We've got Winter's Night. So this is green, red, white enchant world. Whenever a snow-covered land is tapped for mana, it produces an additional mana of the same type and doesn't untap during its controller's next untap phase. Okay, so Snowlands just made a comeback with Modern Horizons, so people have them now. And Winter's Night, if you're looking for a boost in mana, if you're running all snow-covered lands, you could play your Winter's Night as a ritual effect and double all your mana, and then win the game somehow. I like it as a ritual. I like it maybe if you've got lots of mana rocks in your deck in addition to your snowlands, because they give you double mana but only every second turn. I don't know, it's a little bit of a weird card, but it's the kind of card that I would like to use just as in like a weird way, like as a ritual to just double my mana to win the game. So I thought that was cool. Just for completionism, we've got Wandering Mage. That's the Esper one, the white, blue, black one. It's got 3 different abilities. They're all terrible. I think it's like a wizard cleric. So if you can play it in your wizard deck, that's Esper. I'm not even going to read it. Who cares? Going down the list, earlier on in the show, I said that Alliances is like the cEDH player's dream set. And we're going to get to a few cards or all the cards that demonstrate that. But before that, I want to talk about Arcane Denial. This is some people's favorite counter spell. It's blue 1, counter target spell. That spell's controller may draw up to 2 cards at the beginning of the next upkeep, and then we draw a card at the beginning of next turn's upkeep as well. So it's not card disadvantage. You're countering their spell, you're giving them a spell back, plus another one. So you trade card for card, you give them one, but then we get another one too, so everybody's at card parity. People say that counter spells are no good in multiplayer because you counter a spell, sure, but then you're down a card to the other 2 players. So this prevents that from happening, but it does give the opponent whose spell got countered, it gives them a card back. So people like that one. Plus it's only blue 1, so it's really easy to cast. I'm going to get to all of the important lands in this set right now. I saw the first one when I was scrolling down Scryfall, and it is Balduvian Trading Post. It's not one of the good ones. The good ones are Keldarin Outpost, Saldevi Excavations, and Lake of the Dead. These cards were all in Alliances. So all these lands, when they enter the battlefield, you have to sacrifice a land of the appropriate color. So like Lake of the Dead is probably the most famous one. When it enters the battlefield, you have to sacrifice a swamp or sacrifice Lake of the Dead. It taps for a black, but you can tap and sacrifice a swamp to add black, 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 black to your mana pool. This is a mighty card. This card has led to many a turn 2 win, I'm sure. Saldevi Excavations is the blue one. When it enters the battlefield, you have to sacrifice an untapped island. So it's a little bit slower, but you can tap it to add blue 1 to your mana pool. So you kind of get that mana back that you had to sacrifice. Or you can go 1, tap, look at the top card of your library. You can put it on the bottom of your library. So you scry on a land. And you can do that every turn. Kelderan Outpost gives you a 1/1 soldier every turn. Like, pay white, 1, tap it. You get a 1/1 soldier token every turn. And you have to sacrifice a plains when it comes into play, and it taps to give you a white. So those are the 3 good ones, I think. But there was a whole cycle of them, and they were from alliances, and they still see play today. The next cycle I want to talk about, and it's funny, like the further we get, the more cycles we start to see. This is Wizards of the Coast R&D like discovering or developing the knowledge that people like cycles. They like to see a card in each color that has an effect that's unique to that color. So that started around like the 95, 96 era, and it's on full display in alliances. The next cycle I want to talk about is what we call the pitch cycle, or what was called the pitch cycle. Now it's called the Force of Will cycle because Force of Will is the most prolific one. There was a cycle of cards. I think that they all costed like color 3, so 5 mana total, but you could exile a card of the same color from your hand and pay a life to cast them for free. Obviously the best one is Force of Will, blue 3, counter target spell, but you could exile a blue card and pay 1 life instead of paying its mana cost. So it's a free counter spell provided you had 2 life and a blue card in your hand. Obviously one of the most powerful cards of all time because a free counter spell is the best thing. It keeps Legacy and Vintage honest. It was reprinted in Eternal Masters. It's good in Commander. It's good in cEDH. It's good in every format that it's legal in. So good, in fact, that they actually sort of printed a new copy of it in Modern Horizons called Force of Negation, where, and again, that was a cycle where you can cast stuff for free, provided it's not your turn. The other ones here, one of them I'm looking at is called Bounty of the Hunt. Same kind of clause. It's green 3, instant. You can remove a green card in your hand and pay a life rather than pay its mana cost, and you can put 3 +1/+1 counters on any 3 creatures. This card actually is going to see some play in the new Hydra Commander that was released with Core Set 2020, that whenever you target a Hydra you control, it fights something else. So you can just go pitch a green card, pay a life, target 3 different Hydras. They fight 3 different things to kill all your blockers because my Hydras are bigger, and then you just swing in and kill them. So that's Bounty of the Hunt. The other one that saw some play is called Pyrokinesis. And this one actually costs red 4. You can pitch a red card, pay a life rather than pay its mana cost, and it deals 4 damage divided any way you choose among any things. So this saw play in Legacy Zoo like 10 or 12 years ago. Like back when I played Legacy, this was a good card in Zoo sideboards against like Goblins or Affinity early game. You could just like pitch a lightning bolt and pyrokinesis all their dudes before they could like move counters around or whatever, or before their goblins got big. Like you could do it on turn 2 before they got their Goblin King, and then just crash in with Tarmogoyfs and Wild Nacatls on your turn 3 and just kill them. It's great. I don't know if pyrokinesis goes in commander decks. Like I've tried to play it in my mono red Zata Storm list, just as a means to be able to pitch a card to get another free Storm card and to get rid of mana dorks. So that's probably fine. Tapped out, somebody goes to Lab Maniac, win, and you just like, just kidding, pyrokinesis, draw your last card, you die. That's the best play I ever did. Going down the list, I see Elvish Spirit Guide. Modern players would be familiar with Simian Spirit Guide, which is the red version of this card. It's a 2/2 spirit for green 2, but who cares? If it's in your hand, you can exile it to get a green mana just for free. So that goes in a lot of cEDH decks. We've got Gorilla Shaman, which is a 1/1 for red. XX1, destroy target non-creature artifact with converted mana cost equal to X. So if they've got a whole bunch of 0-cost mocks, you just go X is 0, pay 1, destroy target non-creature artifact with a converted mana cost of 0. Mox Monkey, they call it. That's a cEDH staple in red decks. Helm of Obedience. This creates an instant win with Leyline of the Void. So what Helm of Obedience says is it's a 4-drop artifact. You can pay X and tap it. Target opponent puts the cards from the top of their library into their graveyard until a creature card or X cards is put into their graveyard this way, whichever comes first. If a creature card is put into the graveyard this way, sacrifice Helm of Obedience, put that card onto the battlefield. X can't be 0. So what you do with Leyline of the Void, which says whenever a card goes into your opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you exile it. You go Helm of Obedience, X equal 1. And they put cards into their graveyard until a creature card or X cards is put into the graveyard. But because 0 cards go into the graveyard due to Leyline of the Void's ability, they just mill their whole deck. So there's another one for you. Next cEDH staple I want to talk about, Limdul's Vault. This is an instant. Like what? An instant for black, blue. Reveal it, or look at the top 5 of your library. You can put them on the bottom. Pay 1 life to do it again as many times as you want. Of course, you look at the top 5 cards. Pay a life every time you don't find your combo piece to put them all on the bottom and look at the next 5, next 5, next 5, next 5. It's kind of like a poor man's ad nauseum. Then you just find a way to draw the card that you want and you cast it and you win. Here's another one, Phyrexian Devourer. This combos with Necrotic Ooze. I'm not even going to go into it, but I could go on and on. You've got Shield Sphere. This is a 0-drop. This goes in your Joyra Weatherlight Captain deck. You've got Seldevi Adnate. This goes in your Grenzo Dungeon Warden deck. These are all cEDH decks. So you see what I mean. There's a whole ton of cards in here that... here's another one, Thought Lash. It's an enchantment with cumulative upkeep. Remove the top card of your library from the game. If you don't, you have to exile Thought Lash. But you could pay 0, remove the top card of your library from the game to prevent 1 damage to you. You just prevent the next 80 damage to yourself and exile every card in your library, then draw a card with Lab Maniac. So tons of stuff in here for the cEDH players. And for everybody who isn't a cEDH player, sorry, I chose to focus on that a little bit just because it's so on display in alliances. But here, I'll throw you a bone. The memeiest of meme card ever, Stormcrow, originally printed in alliances. Some people collect these. They're in multiple languages. They come in foil, non-foil. Some people collect like misprinted, miscut, or crimped Stormcrows. And they can get pretty pricey because so many people collect them because they're such a meme card. So it's a 1/2 flyer for blue 1. That's it. Stormcrow, originally in alliances. Last card I want to talk about from alliances, and I've seen this one used to great effect. Surge of Strength. This is an instant for green-red. Choose and discard a red or green card from your hand. Target creature you control gains trample and gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is equal to that creature's casting cost. The discarded creature's casting cost. So it's an instant, so you can steal a game with this, right? Like, let's say I'm attacking you with a whatever infect. That's where I've seen it. And somebody just discards like Crater Hoof because they don't have 8 mana to cast Crater Hoof. Gives the little infector like +5 or +8/+8. Boom, you're dead. So that's a cool one. But that's all I got for alliances. If you want to tell me about your experience with alliances, if you've ever cracked packs and pulled a pack fresh Force of Will or Lake of the Dead, let me know. You can get after me on Twitter @CADPopcast. Shoot me a message on Facebook or reply to the episode 11 Facebook post at facebook.com/CADPopcast. If you're in a position to support the show, if you want to unlock some discounted altered art cards for yourself or some tutorial content, you can head over to patreon.com/CADPopcast. If you want to send me anything longer form or private, like a community story that you'd like me to share, I'm always in the market to read a nice, heartfelt Magic the Gathering story, of course. You can do so by emailing cadpopcast@gmail.com. Big thank you to my sponsors, FusionGamingOnline.com, for all your alliances needs, all your cEDH needs, all your REDH, your regular EDH